Hello. So it's been a while since I've uploaded to this channel. I've wanted to talk about wrestling for a while now, and then I turned this channel into a movie channel, and then I stopped uploading entirely. I wanted to come back to wrestling in some fashion, but in many ways, talking about wrestling nowadays just feels kind of sad because, well, WWE is actually pretty good now, and AEW is, despite recent controversies, still pretty good. The indies are doing really well. It feels really depressing to talk about sometimes because of just the interwebs, for lack of a better word. But my mind always went back to NXT,
The future is now.
specifically Black and Gold NXT. So, kind of like Evil Knievel jumping the Snake River Canyon, I'm going to be starting a new series where I review every single episode of Black and Gold NXT from June of 2012 to September of 2021. Yeah, this is ambitious, I know, but it's from a period of time where I just loved wrestling. Like, I still do, but this was just it was at its peak in this era from like 2014, mid 2014 till like 2018 into 2019. Peak wrestling fandom was in that 4 or 5 year span. But I am a bit of a completionist at heart, so I wanted to start at the very beginning and work my way to the end. Because from NXT to where it began in June of 2012 up to early 2014, I've never seen. So I wanted to start there and kind of go from one to the other. So this is going to be a very long series. And with that in mind, I have a couple of rules that I'm giving to myself for this series. Number one, I've got about a decade of wrestling to cover. So for the time being, I'm going to be covering two of these episodes in one. So for example, in this video, I'm going to be covering the NXT episodes from June 20th and the 27th of 2012. Again, just to get through these in my lifetime. Number two, I will not be using hindsight. Looking at what these superstars would do on the main roster would make this a very depressing series indeed. So I'm just going to try and keep it in a vacuum and only look at these people in their NXT runs. It might be impossible in certain circumstances, and considering some of the video packages that we see in the first episode from June 20th, it's going to be hard not to go into what they go into in the future, but I'm going to try my hardest. Number three, I'm not going to be talking about AEW. If, for example, when we get to the Revival or to Aleister Black, I'm going to be calling them the Revival and Aleister Black, not because of an anti-AEW bias. I like AEW. I want them to be successful. However, for the sake of symmetry, I'm only going to be referring them by their NXT names. If I start calling Aleister Malachi Black, or if I go like Scott Dawson and Dash Weiler or Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, my brain's going to break. So for the sake of symmetry, I'm just going to call them by their NXT names. Cool? All right, well, it's time to start reliving NXT, starting with NXT from June 20th, 2012. It really is fascinating to note that just before this hard reboot of NXT, NXT was the game show era of NXT, which unofficial rule number 4, I'm not going to be talking about game show NXT. I just don't want to talk about it all that much. But it's just crazy to go from NXT in cavernous arenas to NXT in Full Sail University. It's a bit of a hard reboot, like I mentioned, but it was desperately needed and was the right thing to do. But we open up this episode with Jim Ross, good old JR, and Dusty Rhodes. And Dusty Rhodes is named the interim NXT general manager. I loved seeing these two on stage together because it turns out they were actually really good friends in real life and worked very closely in WCW and in other areas. So seeing them together was nice, and it gave me a little pang in the heart because this was Dusty Rhodes' last on-camera role before his passing in 2015. And from what we know about him, he was very influential to like super early Black and Gold NXT. He was very influential to a lot of people who would go on to do a lot of big things. So seeing him in this role was very nice to see, but also very sad because Dusty is now no longer with us. Rest in peace. But in this promo, Dusty basically announces the main event for the evening, and he calls it a big main event, being Tyson Kidd and Michael McGillicuddy. Not what I would call a big main event, but all right, let's see where they go with it. We immediately then go to our first video package, and spoiler alert, there are a lot of these video packages across both of these shows, of Bo Dallas. And yeah, this was, of the 2 episodes that I watched, this was one of my least favorite parts. I don't really understand like what they were trying to do with the Bo Dallas character. I feel like they were trying to go for more of a white meat babyface kind of role. I don't think it really worked, considering, and again, I'm trying my hardest not to go into hindsight, but in NXT's future, where Bo Dallas would end up going with his character. Basically, in this video package, they portray him as this third-generation star because his father is IRS and he is of relations to the Wyndham family, so that's all well and good. But his promo just came across very generic and very much like, hey, I'm just so happy to be here. It's like, didn't we learn this was not the right strategy with a guy named Rocky Maivia? But anyway, we throw it to the next match, which is Bo Dallas taking on Rick Victor, who, of course, would later go on to be Victor in the Ascension. And it literally took me a minute to figure this out, but it turns out later on in this show, the Ascension make their debut, and Rick Victor, the man who would go on to be Victor in the Ascension, was not part of the Ascension at the time. It's someone else named Kenneth Cameron, who would go on to be Tom Latimer in the NWA. What happened here? I so want to know. But regardless, Bo Dallas would end up winning with a spear. You're not going to hear me complain about the spear being used as a finisher, but this was just a very dry match. It just a dry promo, a dry match. Just if they were pushing Bo Dallas to be the next big thing, I don't think they started it off well. We then get 2 video packages in a row. First up for Seth Rollins, and the next up is for Antonio Cesaro. For Seth Rollins, this package was great. It basically told us what his character is, showed some footage from his FCW days, and it was short, sweet, and I was legit excited to see him, which he would debut on the next episode on the 27th. And then for Cesaro, it was so funny, like, watching this promo because I had to, like, do a double take and remember that Cesaro was being pushed as, like, a rugby player who got kicked out of the league for being too violent. And his on-screen valet, I guess, was Oksana. Yeah, it's fairly safe to say Cesaro went a long way away from this by the time his WWE run came to an end. We then get one of my absolute favorite parts of these 2 shows that I watched in preparation for this video, Damien Sandow versus Jason Jordan. This match does not happen because Damien Sandow basically comes out in his robe with the Hallelujah, the theme, holds the microphone like a brandy glass, and he is like, yeah, you're an ignoramus and I am not wrestling you. And the match just doesn't happen. I am not doing justice. I'm definitely underselling it. The segment was great. Damien Sandow, out of everyone that I saw in this episode, he clearly understood his role and just embraced it. Like, Damien Sandow, he was just great. Also, seeing Jason Jordan was just really sad because of what would happen to him because of the whole neck injury thing. But yeah, nice to see him, but also sad at the same time. Again, trying to stay away from hindsight and kind of failing. And like I mentioned earlier, we see the Ascension first cutting a promo in front of a green screen city. Then we get a Raw rebound, which I completely forgot this was even a thing, for the last appearance of People Power, John Laurinaitis, because he was the GM for a time. I haven't forgotten either. But this was like his last one because he had just gotten fired on No Way Out 2012, and it was supposed to be a 3-on-1 deal with him, Big Show, and David Otunga versus John Cena. And Big Show and David Otunga were like, we're going to head out. And so they did. And Laurinaitis was never seen on camera again with the sporadic appearances. with notwithstanding. And in our semi-main, we have a tag team match as the Ascension make their debut against the team of Mike Dalton and CJ Parker. And seeing Mike Dalton and CJ Parker just crazy to me, considering what they would go and do, especially in NXT, and considering how different the Ascension would look by the time they left. It's just crazy to me. But it's a very short and sweet match. I don't think even Mike Dalton even gets tagged into this match. It is a squash. The Ascension win with the Downcast. That's not a good name for their finisher, but they win with the Downcast, and it's a dominant victory. They have a match on the next episode, and it is much better. More on that in a minute. We get our last video package of the show, and it is for Bray Wyatt. It's nice to know that Bray Wyatt always talked in rhymes and riddles that no one understood. We get an actual backstage segment with the main event for next week being Derek Bateman looking to control his narrative against Johnny Curtis looking to dance the night away. Johnny Curtis was found in a bathroom in this episode. I had so many questions that I didn't want to know the answers to. And in our actual main event, it is the aforementioned big main event daddy between Tyson Kidd and Michael McGillicuddy. And I must eat my words because this match was actually very good. Both of these guys were just really good. I wasn't too high on the man who would be Curtis Axel later down the road. And Tyson Kidd was just okay to me, though from what I remember, he is actually quite good in NXT, so I'm looking forward to reliving all of that. But this match was really solid. Kidd gets in a lot of really good offense. He hits a tope that was really good, and he gets in a lot of great offense. And McGillicuddy plays the heel really well. He hits a Northern Lariat, like a clothesline to the back of the head, that I was just like, wow, that must have hurt. And he gets in a couple of near falls that I was like, okay, I know who's going to win because I looked up the result beforehand. But at first I was like, wait, is Wikipedia wrong? And so it was actually quite good. But Tyson Kidd ends up winning with the Dungeon Lock, and Tyson Kidd and Michael McGillicuddy, hats off to the both of them. They actually did quite good. Overall, this episode was actually quite solid. It was very video package heavy, but I had no problem with that. Feel like they took a very slow drip approach to introducing everyone because this is, developmental. It's a long con, so you got to introduce them like Tree Falls in the Forest and all of that. Overall, fun show. Now we get on to the NXT from June 27th, and we start out with an actual match as Seth Rollins makes his debut against Jiro. And immediately I understood, looking a little on down the road, why Seth Rollins was made the first NXT champion, because he's another one like Damian Sandow who just understood it. And Seth Rollins had a lot of time on the indies beforehand, so of course he was going to be solid. But just here, he was just a ball of energy on this show. The match was very quick. Jiro didn't have a chance. Seth Rollins ended up winning with the curb stomp to get the win. He had a promo on the stage afterward with someone named Chris Russo, who I had to look up who he was. He was a short-lived announcer for NXT. He now works for Booker T's promotion, Reality of Wrestling. So good on him for that. But these on the stage promos, I was not a big fan of, and they slowly phased them out from what my memory serves. So there is that. After Rollins cuts this promo, we then see an interruption from Jinder Mahal as he is on his way down to his match to face Jason Jordan. I don't want to give WWE or NXT too much credit. Long-term storytelling and them are this far apart. But considering the Gold Rush tournament that comes afterwards with Jinder Mahal and Seth Rollins being in the finals, that could not have been a coincidence. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, Jinder Mahal makes his NXT debut against Jason Jordan. It's a squash. He wins with the camel clutch. Before and after the match, he cuts a promo in Hindi, but at the end of his after-match promo, he says that he's going to carve NXT in his own image.
Sure, Jan.
We then get another video package and a match, this time for Leo Kruger. And really, I could not hear anything this man was saying over his snot green dress shirt. Who put this man in this dress shirt? Who did this? Anyway, he explains why he is named Leo Kruger. His first name is Leo, meaning lion. All right, cool. I knew that already. But then he goes on to face Aiden English. It's another squash. He wins with a sleeper hold. Okay. It's weird because of where Leo Kruger would end up, especially in NXT Black and Gold, but little more on that down the road. Also, one more note before I move on. Kruger gets something that is a theme song that is incredibly just like, you know how in OSW review how they talk about theme songs that are just really farty? This is like the most farty theme song I've ever heard. And I had to look it up. This was not Leo Kruger's theme. His theme is completely different, but on the Peacock version, it's clearly dubbed with something because in the aftermath of the match, you hear a little bit of his actual theme before the dubbed theme kicks in. So that was a bit of a messy edit. But this theme song was just, it was like something. And I looked it up. I was thinking, is this the South African national anthem? No, it's not. The South African national anthem is actually quite good. So what was this song? Someone needs to explain it to me. Then we have a tag team match as the Ascension takes on the Usos in the face paint form. And I forgot how legit awkward it is for the Usos to do their warrior dance at the beginning. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm sure it's a Samoan tradition, and I am respectful of that. But just them standing there just doing the dance, I was just like, are people supposed to get into it? Like, what's going on? It's pretty safe to say the Usos would do very well for themselves, though, beyond NXT. This match was actually quite competitive, though the Ascension did end up winning with the Downcast. This was by no means a squash match, though. The Usos were more than able to hold their own. I got a feeling that the Usos it felt like they were being saved for something. Yes, they did lose. They lost clean, but they lost strong in the way that they weren't completely just wiped away like Mike Dalton and CJ Parker. They actually got some offense in, and I thought that was actually handled pretty well. We then get a video package for Richie Steamboat, the son of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and again, kind of breaking the hindsight rule, Richie Steamboat is not long for NXT. He would get a back injury that would basically end his wrestling career. However, there are some subtle seeds planted here of what could have been, because in his promo, he says that something along the lines of, and I wrote it down so I could remember, everybody knows me for the Steamboat name. What comes with that? There's a very audible pause there. So there's a little bit of like low-lying kind of resentment, I guess, for the Steamboat name. Maybe Richie wanted to carve his own path, but it's never fully explained. It's kind of there, but unfortunately, because of real life, we'll never truly know. My point is that it was a little fascinating tidbit. I would have loved to have seen where that went. In a perfect world, I would have liked to have seen maybe a Richie versus Ricky match, kind of like what we got earlier at WrestleMania this year with Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio. But again, age might have been at fault here. So maybe Ricky Steamboat could have gotten someone as like a charge for him. I don't know. I guess we'll never know, but it's fascinating to think about. But Richie Steamboat has a match on this show against Rick Victor. It's academic. Richie Steamboat wins with the Sling Blade. Someone must have been watching some Hiroshi Tanahashi tapes. And afterwards, he hugs his dad, which was very nice. We then get another Raw rebound, this time for a match between John Cena and Chris Jericho. Jericho had the match won, but then the Big Show comes out and knocks John Cena out because of his whole ironclad contract thing. Okay. And Cesaro has always looked really good, but he looks like really ripped here. Like he was clearly he just looks so solid here. But it's academic. He defeats Dante Dash with the neutralizer, which in the articles I looked up, it was described as sort of a styles clash. Okay, I suppose, maybe like a Gotch styles clash? A Gotch clash. But anyway, I'm excited to see what they do with Cesaro. We get yet another video package for Bray Wyatt. It is incomprehensible nonsense, but we see the outline of Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. Rest in peace, Luke Harper. And in the main event, we have what was built up last week, Derek Bateman controlling his narrative versus Johnny Curtis having a dance. And this was nowhere near as good as the McGillicuddy Kid match, but it was solid for what it was. My favorite call of these these two shows from commentary is from good old JR, where Johnny Curtis is running around the ring to get away from Derek, and he's like, "See Johnny run!" And then when Derek tries to enter the ring, Johnny tries to go for a knee drop and he misses, and then JR follows it up with, "See Johnny miss a knee." I laughed at that way too hard, I'm not gonna lie. But Derek Bateman ends up winning with the DBD, as it is called. It's basically a snapmare driver of sorts for the win. But that is all for this video. On the next episode, we'll be covering July 4th and July 11th, 2012 of NXT. On the July 4th episode, we'll be seeing a lot of debuts, including Cassius Ohno. We'll see Seth Rollins in action, and Paige makes her debut. And on the July 11th episode, we'll be seeing Bray Wyatt's in-ring debut, as well as a match between the Usos and the Primetime Players. So there's actually some stuff to look forward to. But I pass it off to all of you. Did you have a favorite superstar in like early NXT, man or woman? Let me know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. My name's Jacob. I love wrestling. See you in the next one.